Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me. And thank you for the intro there, Jonathan. Right, we have got quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to crack on. But just so you know what we're going to be covering, we're going to be looking at what the menopause is. And for some of you, I may be introducing you to a new term, which is the climacteric period. We're going to look at some of the symptoms, staying in the scope of practice that I'm within. So I'm a personal trainer. So I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to be sorting out what medications we need to be taking. We're going to be looking at a more of a traditional approach to menopause and training. And then I'd like to introduce you to the faster process because it's really helped me with my students and with my clients, particularly motor skill application specialists. So we'll have a little look at biomechanical matching and introduce you to matching feelings. So I did give you a little bit of a warning there that I am not a doctor, and I'm like, thank goodness. So brilliant, all you doctors out there. This is Dr. Louise Newson, and recently she was highlighted on a Panorama show because she chose to give her clients, her patients, 200 milligrams above the recommended 100 milligrams of estrogen. Now, I can't comment on whether that's good or bad, but what I do know is it's not what the actual guidelines are. She's a private doctor, so she can take that step. The grey area is there's not enough research yet. And what saddened me about this story was the fact that too many people are saying, well, we don't have the research yet, so on my clinical experience, I'm going to recommend 200 milligrams above. And I would just like to say to you, please watch out. There are a lot of people around using the terms menopause expert, and social media is absolutely rife with it. But one of the things you can do is look out for some really clear red flags. According to my clinical experience, now while that has a place and is important, it is a lower form of research because clinical experience is not tested under the rigor of science. And that is really important. And also, if you hear the wonderful, well, according to my very important friend, another call to authority. So my opinions are not important. My experience of the menopause is not important. But what I want to do today is to share with you the underpins, the research that's behind motor skill that will help our clients change the way they move, and hopefully that will give them a better experience of menopause. A little bit of who I am. I know Jonathan said, I was on the committee at Idea World, but I'm a mum of two. Those are my little gremlins in the corner. They're all grown up now and they're lovely. And then this is my new addition. This is my little dog, Lola, and she's a schnoodle and she's absolutely marvelous. In the bottom picture, I no longer have with me my grandma, but there's my mum and my sister-in-law. And we've all experienced the menopause in a very different manner. One thing you might not know about me is I love doing Spartans and Tough Mudders and swinging on the rings in LA. In fact, it's my favourite place. So if there's ever any place to present out there, I'm like, yes, please, just so I can go and get on the rings at the same time. So the menopause, that's what we're here to talk about, and why I'm calling it the climacteric period. Well, the menopause really is defined as if it's the end of a race. Well done, you've made it through 12 months of not having a period. Your estrogen has dropped and you're no longer producing eggs. And that can be quite traumatic if somebody has been hoping to have children and trying to have children, and all of a sudden this marked event is finished at this finish line. And I would like to say it's so much more than that. We are not defined by the end of our race and the emptying of our ovaries. We know that many people go through pre-menopause, perimenopause, menopause, and then post-menopause. About 30 years of our life. It's a big time. And the climacteric period is a much more medical term for the changing ratio of the hormones. And if we think that we can eat our hormones different or exercise our hormones different, good luck with that, because the body of research does not support that. However, there is good news. If you take you and you make sure that you doesn't smoke, eats a healthy diet, and has a good activity level, you will be the best version of you to cope with whatever storm is brewing when it comes to the climacteric period. It can be a rocky ride, and a lot of people say we're all in the same boat. Hell no, we're not. We don't know what this storm is going to be like, and everybody's boat might be differently equipped. We can make our boat the best possible by making sure that we're fit, we're healthy, and we're not smoking. But we can't guarantee how our body is going to respond to this ratio of hormones going up and down. This is Claire, and she's one of our faster students. And at 22, she went through her menopause for the first time, medical menopause. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and so it wasn't a choice. Medically, it was induced. So if you've had cancer or if you have any ovary issues, then this will drop that estrogen or a hysterectomy, and you may go into menopause early or that climacteric period. Bless her, she had breast cancer again. October was a big month of celebrating for her. But not only that, she's now going through menopause again. So her hormones are changing that ratio again. And talking to her, it was really interesting because she said the first time through, it was really, really physical. It was really those vasomotor symptoms, the hot sweats, which I would say are a surge or a furnace of fire going down your back. But the second time for her, it was far more psychological. She said she was more anxious. She was, her cognition went. She had brain fog. She was, just really, really not in a good place. And for many people, that can be a really, really awful time. As trainers, our role is to make sure that we give people a great experience. We want to make sure that we're getting them moving, we meet them where they're at. Now, the good news is I'm hoping that all of you already have a really good PARQ form, and that will cover most of the things that would crop up within the climacteric period. But we do not guess. One of my best friends, she kept saying to her doctor that she felt, that things weren't quite right. They were ignoring her. They put her on HRT. 2 years later, she now has cancer. It was stage 4 cervical cancer, and the estrogen that they were giving her was feeding that cancer. Now, that's not the case for everyone, but I'm just saying it's really, really important that we don't make a guess, because although there are thousands and hundreds of symptoms of menopause, there are also symptoms of many, many other things too. And I thought it might be quite nice, actually, at this point, if you're near a pen and paper, old-fashioned, or type it on your phone, if you are going through the menopause, or gentlemen, if you've got a partner that's been through the menopause, write down what are some of those symptoms they may have experienced. Is it hot flushes? Is it irritability? Did they divorce you? That's one thing that is quite common. Many, many different things. And it's not as simple as just a hot sweat. Random hairs growing out of your chin, just lovely, lovely. Obviously, it can also affect libido, sex drive. You may not have that on your PARQ. So it might be an idea to have a little group set up a community for your clients within your club that helps put people together. So from the age of 40 to 50, that's when we can be going through that peri, up to menopause is normally around 52, but everything from 50 is very, very normal. But the hard part of this early stage in the climacteric period is not knowing, especially if you're going to the doctor and you're feeling gaslit. So the PAR-Q, we're going to notice any of those key issues: cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, bone joint issues, pain, respiratory, any asthma that's not been medicated, all of those things, COPD, diabetes type 1 and type 2. And if within that you start to notice, there are some more symptoms going on here that could be menopausal, go and get them to go and see a doctor or an endocrinologist. Don't guess with it. But I thought we'd go through some of the key symptoms. We've got our somatic symptoms. Now, these are the mental health issues that we can get. It can be in a form of loss of libido. We can also start to get symptoms of incontinence, which can cause a lot of stress. So the first thing I would say, if you are a club organizer, there's some simple things that you can help your personal trainers and group exercise instructors to do, and that is to normalize this and make sure that if you are training people from that age of 40, so even before, because pre and postnatal, we need to be really good at saying, you know what, here are the toilets. You never need to ask me if you need to go. And make sure in the toilets that you haven't just got toilet roll, but you have actually got sanitary towels. This can be an absolute lifesaver. I remember my teenager, first of all, having that horrible experience of coming on without notice. And that becomes more frequent when you're going through the climacteric period. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, that's a surprise. I remember being in a hotel and I was just mortified. But as club owners, as professionals, we can make that much easier for our clients. Random joint pains. We have a lot more people coming in saying, oh, I was told I had frozen shoulder. That's a very lazy diagnosis, by the way, frozen shoulder. It gets me. But okay, so you have an acromion issue in the shoulder. A lot of women going through the climacteric period will find that they have a lot more aches, a lot more pains. It's even more common to have plantar fasciitis, headaches as well, excruciating headaches. And an unusual one is a reactive form of arthritis in the hands. Now, interestingly, if you want to know whether you might get this reactive arthritis, the best way of finding out what your climacteric period was going to be like is ask your sister. If you haven't got a sister, that's not going to work. But if you have got an older sister that's already been through it, then you'll know. And if they did get reactive arthritis, it's a really good idea to do some weight-bearing exercises, some plyometric weight-bearing exercises on your wrists before you get a flare-up. Not when you have a flare-up, but prior to that. Now, as I always do with any of my talks, and that is a big reminder that if anybody has any form of unexplained pain, do not guess. Just because they may be in that age range, we don't know. They could have something else going on. And the big thing I want ruled out is a form of disease that I can't see. And so that is a medical doctor, not a voodoo doctor, a medical doctor to get that sorted. But it is important to remember that you can have pain when there is damage, and you can have pain when there is no damage whatsoever. And I love the British Pain Society for helping my clients to understand pain. It's a great resource. I highly recommend it. Normally, with our clients, you get pain if you have an injury, and that would be considered acute. But anything that would last more than 12 weeks, that's going to go on into chronic pain. But as long as we've had it diagnosed, I'm not saying that's great, they've got chronic pain, but if they have it diagnosed and it is chronic pain, the great thing is we can help change the experience, because pain ultimately is a feeling. And when you get a feeling, what's a feeling? Well, a feeling is when you get an emotion, a what moment. Well, what's an emotion? When you get a trigger, when something is important enough to you, your body changes, your muscles change, your hormones change in that moment, and you get an emotion. And within about 6 seconds, your brain has to go through a whole checklist of stories it's been told by doctors, mothers, teachers, fathers. Has it ever happened before? Was that pain something that led to something quite exciting in the bedroom? It might have been. Then that might be a positive experience. Or was it something that was scary? Then you take an action, and the action you take will reinforce the feeling. And the more feelings that we replicate will become an experience, like a litter or a herd. So just to quickly go through that again, because it's really, really important. We constantly have got our sensors that are telling us things that are going on. If something's too hot, something's too cold, did somebody just fart and there's a toxic smell in here? Ew. At that point, you get this what moment. That's when the muscles change, the hormones change, you get an emotion, and within 6 seconds, your brain has to assess the story, the history, the experience it has, and then react to that feeling of whether it's a positive, yay, go get the sandwich, or run, that's some big hairy spider that I don't want to be near at all. And the reason why I'm just going through that is because pain is a feeling, which means we can change the experience. And that's awesome. And when I started looking at research studies on those vasomotor symptoms, the hot flushes, fascinating that some people, whilst being all hooked up, would register their surge. So as those blood vessels were playing havoc and they were having this furnace through their body, but sometimes they were physically having this hot surge, but they didn't experience it. And to me, that's like, maybe there's something hopeful in this. There's a lot more that needs to be done and studies to look at, but it gave me some hope that maybe we can help change the experience of these hot flushes. So there we go, our vasomotor symptoms, hot flushes, night sweats, and that's when the blood vessels are dilating, and this is because of that decline in estrogen levels. We've got some other physical symptoms, such as our muscle mass being lost. So on average, we start to lose 0.7% of muscle each year from the age of 30, but it spikes as we hit the final race part of that menopause, when our ovaries stop. We also get a shift in fat. So the visceral fat that was on our hips will start to shift around our tummy, and it's not the stuff that you can pinch that's the problem. That might be annoying, but that's the subcutaneous fat, and that's okay. It's actually the visceral fat that sits underneath that and attaches to our organs that we actually want to do something about and give our bodies the best chance. So as a personal trainer, we've gone through our PAR-Q, and we've maybe flagged up that maybe they've had a broken bone and then they were diagnosed with osteoporosis. So then at least we know. we can now start to think about what we want to do with our client and how we can help them. One of the biggest things that we can do is think about the amount of movement is in everybody's lives, not just our women going through the climacteric period, but for everybody. So according to the WHO, the national guide, same as the NHS, the World Health Organization, we're looking at 150 minutes of moderate exercise, but let's try and get that up to 300. And we're looking at least 2 or 3 times a week of strength training. Once we get over the age of 65, we've added another element, and we did another talk on this before, how to reduce the risks of falling. And that is to start to improve the way we move, our reactive balance. Functional training, a great way of doing that is just by using a walk, but slowing it down so you get your body weight to shift from one leg and then finally onto the other. So if we can get people more active, we're already doing a great job. That's brilliant. 40% of Americans aren't getting that amount of activity in their daily lives. And when we look at the climacteric period, that drops again to only 7%. So my hope is that we can do a little bit better. But the problem is, exercise as the solution always seems quite hard for a lot of people. It's hard to get inspired, particularly when you've had no sleep, or it's hard to get inspired if you put your leggings on and they're really sore, or it's hard to get inspired if you feel like your body's changed and you've spent your whole life already with a mass amount of toxic social media presence and pressure on your body. There's a lot to go through, both physically and psychologically. Our clients might come to us and they say, I can't get my trousers on, I've put on weight, I want to lose weight. And we know that really we would like exercise to be the best way of losing weight, but it isn't the most effective way of losing weight. However, that's not to say that if you've lost weight, then moving and exercise is brilliant for keeping that off. It's also fantastic if you want to live longer. It's also amazing if you want to be the best version of you to be able to handle anything that comes your way, both climacteric periods or any other forms of disease. If we can make sure that we're not smoking, that we're moving more, and of course that we've got our nutrition on point, then that is brilliant. So what we need to do is we need to excite our clients, and we need to make sure that they're not just doing one squat, not just one deadlift, but they enjoy it so much that they book in to come back. So normally the traditional approach would be either it might be to start off with a balance movement. I'm not sure if you can see me here, a balance movement. Then we might progress onto a one-legged squat, so going into a strength movement. And then we may progress that movement into a machine-based exercise. Or you might then want to progress that into Olympic lifting or free weights. And that would be our sort of general protocol on progressing an exercise, thinking about reps and sets and volumes and the amount of rest that we have. But for many people, this still feels absolutely overwhelming. So we might start off with a basic body weight squat. Now, bearing in mind that if we have experienced this complete body change, or we have started to struggle with weight gain, we may have also started to struggle with making good decisions when it comes to our nutrition or moving more. And so we've possibly become more sedentary. Maybe we're not running after a family, or maybe our jobs are more sedentary, But with that comes the loss of motor skill and that ability that makes it harder to do what we might think is a simple movement pattern. So you might actually spend 4 weeks just trying to get somebody to squat or lunge well. Once we have done that, we might want to introduce some machine-based. I put in a leg press machine because it's one of my guilty pleasures. One bicep curl and the other a leg press machine. I think it's just the ego, like you can just walk past it and pump it out a little bit. I do love a leg press machine. And then we want to make sure that we're putting in some activities that require our clients to balance and get used to that shift of gravity. And that would be a good progression and might be great for our clients that are coming in with weight loss. But I feel like we want more. And this is where I want to introduce you to the way that we would work at Faster. And the first thing I would be thinking at Faster would be, what is an exercise really? What's it all about? And although on one hand, I might have said in the past, oh, well, I've got these 32 exercises, a lunge, a squat, a bench press, a press, a pull, a hinge. But really, it's just a movement behavior that normally has a short-term goal. And if you do it enough, then hopefully it will lead to a long-term goal. So how do we make these little short-term goals more effective and more exciting for our clients? So I think what I'm really sort of getting at here is that an exercise is how we observe bones moving in space. So if you think about a squat, you can all do this if you're not driving. As I squat, what had to happen is I wanted you to drop and get back out again. And what we get to observe is the movement behavior. And we can describe that as pelvis went back and down. Now in this picture here, I'm thinking about using a core exercise that could be great for someone who said they wanted weight loss. And I'm thinking, well, if you say that you want weight loss, what are the areas that you feel that weight is? And although we can't spot fat reduce, it's kind of cool if you wake up and you go, oh, I feel those abs, or I feel that back, or I feel that butt. So with this particular exercise, you can see that I've taken the arm up. That would be the first part. So I'm using the waist. But what I've also done is I've stepped the leg back. And as I've taken that leg back, bearing in mind, if my client has walked in, I know they can step forward and I know they can step back. So what I can start to do is load that very simple gait pattern. And when I've done this on this particular exercise here, at Faster, we look at where those bones are going and which muscles get excited. And as we know that muscle loss, 0.7% each year, it's really, really important that we maintain that muscle mass, because that can be something else that can influence weight, because it influences our metabolism, but it can also mean that we don't have those motor skills to be able to move. So if we are caught off balance or anything like that, we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to combat that muscle loss. So this is a great little core exercise. I've got my client standing, driving that arm up as I step the leg back. And I'd be looking at the direction in which those bones are going and the muscles are reacting. And so once we started to think about exercises in this way, so rather than thinking, oh, my client wants to lose weight, oh, here I have my bag, I've got a squat, I've got a lunge, I've got a da-da-da. Instead, what I'm thinking of, what is the performance that they want? What is it that if weight wasn't an issue, or if muscle strength wasn't a problem, what is it that they would like to do? This is my client, Cora. And life can feel like sometimes that a bus is going to come and hit you at some point, and we can never get strong enough to take on a bus head on. But what we can do is we can get good enough at moving and be able to dodge out of the way. But don't worry, Cora didn't want to actually take on a bus. What she wanted to do was to make sure that she could actually walk to the bus without feeling out of breath. She wanted to lose weight, and to her, weight was about confidence. It was about not snoring so that her partner moved and slept in the room next door. It was about being able to be there for her daughter and her daughter's new child. And so we started off where Cora was, and she found it really difficult to actually squat and lunge. So we started off with basic walking patterns. I don't know if you've seen this little toy before, but it looks a bit like a shaky rattle. It's called a core momentum trainer. And what I love about it is it really hits every muscle. But when you get to the point where you've eccentrically lengthened that muscle and gone as far as you think you can, you get this of power, and it takes you that little bit further. And the reason that's so important is because in this particular movement, Cora could stay absolutely still, but then have the power of taking this core momentum trainer across her body, really feeling every muscle that I would say the core is just everything around your shoulders, your spine, your hips, everything that responds to an external force, or that ability to be able to produce power. And boy, did she produce power. We then started to do boxing, and she absolutely loved it. In fact, she has got a wicked punch, and she has lost 4 stone. And I mention this because after losing the 4 stone, she felt fabulous. And she started to be able to not only walk for the bus, but that she then started to try and run. And we were then able to introduce movements like squats and patterns. But the key here is that when we look at the research around motor skill development, what we learn is that you have a path from the skill that we have to performance. And if you're working in performance, your body will give you all of the energy it's got, because it knows that you're skillful at the thing, it knows you can do it well, and it doesn't need to protect you. So this is a great place for weight loss. However, if you don't have the coordination, the sequencing of the muscles in the right order to achieve a task, or you can't produce the right power output at the right time, you have to learn those motor skills. And so while some trainer might be doing a generic exercise that they pulled out of their bag, this exercise doesn't match the client's capabilities. And so while they're trying to teach this client how to do and how to perform, the body is holding back on their energy systems. And so you could be wasting 4 weeks that we could be working on weight loss and giving the client ultimately everything they want for their end goal. Now, the other thing is, and this is a bit of a bugbear, is the use of, well, yeah, but, you know, it's a generic exercise and everybody needs to squat. Then it's not generic, because then it's specific. Because the moment you give somebody a squat, it specifically gets them better at squatting. And so for some people, that might be an absolutely brilliant choice. If they have the skill to be able to squat and they're able to get up and down off a chair or a toilet, that might be a great place to start. But if we're just saying, oh, well, I'm going to give lunges or a deadlift because they are generic, they're not generic, they're specific, because that's how motor learning works. When you learn a skill, when you do a movement, you get better at the thing you're doing. One of my clients came to me, and what they wanted to be able to do is to get back on the ski slopes. They said they wanted to get stronger. Isn't it strange? We talk about strength, we talk about power. How often do we ask our clients what those arbitrary words that we use in the fitness industry means to our clients? So for Karen, feeling strong was about being on her skis all day long. So she needed endurance. She needed the strength to be able to hold her body low. Now here, traditionally, you might say a squat, and that would be a good exercise for somebody that wanted to ski. But I'm going to think, when we look at skiing, it's low, but you're handling weight and you've got to shift your body weight and react. So I want something that may be a little bit more reactive. So I may want to put a jump in there, or I might want to use a band and actually put that in front of my client and start to pull them towards me so they can respond and react towards it. But the thing with Karen that she struggled with, which came from her climacteric period, was putting her boots on and the feeling and the restriction around her ankles. So, you know what I had to do? I said to her, you've got to bring your boots in, which is quite an odd thing when you're training in the park in Wimbledon. So we had we got her boots on, and we had her marching and standing on a little bag there, and we had her moving to different cones. In her hands, I've actually got some little handles like skis, so she could use those. We also got her putting a Viper on her shoulder and walking around. She spent the whole of that session in those boots, walking around with a Viper, because that's what we do. We hold our skis and we move. What we also had to do is think about, how do I get to that endurance part for Karen? So each week we would build this up gradually, knowing that fatigue is a feeling. And so if it's a feeling, we can help change the experiences. We can dip in, dip out, make sure that someone feels safe. And then gradually, I could start to get a little bit more mean on her legs. We could use something like a peripheral heart rate circuit, or you could use PAP. So you could go really heavy with a machine and then do free weight or plyometric work. So there's lots of things that you can do. But the big thing that I loved was we got her to, the big part was the après ski. So she wanted to be able to bop on the top of the table after her shots. And that's important, because we should be able to do that as we go through life. My client, Damaris, loves her gardening, and unfortunately last year she was coming out of her house and unfortunately slipped on a leaf. And although she had been training, she'd been working super hard, she was doing so well, it was just one of those accidents. However, what I'm super pleased about is that she broke her kneecap. Now that sounds horrible. I'm not happy that she broke her kneecap. I'm happy that it wasn't her hip. Because if we break our hips past the age of 60, only 50% of people get their independence back. And so this is really, really important, that we help people to remove their fears of moving, but we get them moving more. Now, although osteoporosis is a problem when you go through the climacteric period and your hormones change, however, interestingly, many men also have osteoporosis. but they don't get diagnosed nearly as often as women. And the reason for that is you normally get diagnosed with osteoporosis when you've had a fall, and women fall more often. There's lots of different reasons potentially for that. Some research will suggest that's because women don't get the same opportunities at sport and movement and daily activities. Also because they tend to be caregivers, and so as they age, they start to reduce the amount of exercise they're doing as they become carers. But what I was determined to do is to make sure that Damaris was still inspired to get moving again. And so what we've done is we've started to set up hurdles that she can step over. She can start to pick up different cones as if she was in her garden. So we're working strength with body weight. We're also working power because we add some little stamps in there, and we're trying to get her back to just a few little jogs. She's walking very, very confidently. So our starting process is to add some weight, but also adding some stomp movements in there. I do love a stomp. And then we'll progress that eventually to hops. A really cute little study on hopping got me all excited. Apparently, if we hop 7 days a week, 50 times, that's quite a lot, then it will increase the bone density around your hip, which is pretty awesome. I know what you're thinking, there's no way we're going to be hopping 50 times on one leg. If you wear a weighted vest, then you don't have to do it. You can do it 4 times a week. But then I was devastated because in the small print, the age study wasn't so great. So we can't get too excited about that. But if we can make it fun, create gameplay, and if anybody does want more information on reducing the risk of falls, then there is a video available on that as well. This is my client, and this is Rachel, and she's in San Diego, and she was diagnosed with a frozen shoulder, and she's had an injection. She was also struggling with her body changing. Now, some days she's like, I'm just going to do this in my pajamas. I'm like, great, fine, absolutely, no worries. But we started off with things that she liked. Now, she used to like doing a lot of kickboxing. So I started to get her arms to stay still, but just started to get her to do little kicks for me. We then got her arm and placed it against the wall, keeping that arm fixed where it was safe. But then what I did, using the biomechanics matching, is I would step the legs away. And as I step those legs away, you probably can't see here, but as I step those legs away, what happens is the gap here goes into flexion, but the central nervous system, the brain, experience safety, comfort, and allows that range of movement. I got her to do squats as homework against the wall each day. And then she was able to move her arm, and she was absolutely thrilled. And it's just a simple way of working a joint, but not in the way that the brain will start to go, oh, I'm in somewhere danger here. We want to take all those fears and dangers away from our clients. So now she's back on her motorbike because that's what she wants to be able to do. And I'm just checking the time because I want to make sure that we have time to have some Q&A on this. So this was Angela, and she was another one with a frozen shoulder, and she wanted to feel strong, and to her, strength was a press up. And that's quite common because it's a controlled body weight movement. And when we started to build her confidence around her shoulder and she started to regain her motor skills, then we would start to load it. And she unfortunately lost her husband. And so she was really looking for something to do. and take her mind off things. So we did a Tough Mudder together. So to me, this is a very emotional picture. You can see on my face, I'm doing everything I can to literally pick her up. And I'm like, no, 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 not that arm. But she was absolutely fine and she loved it. Now with her, I started to notice that she was uncomfortable with her leggings. She got dry eyes. The dry eyes, the uncomfort from the leggings was again a post-menopause symptom. And so I encouraged her to go back to see her gynecologist. She was given some estrogen pumps, and that helped her in that comfort. So sometimes just being knowledgeable on those things and going, I can think something's going on here, send them out to the person that can properly help, but be aware of those things. Sometimes being strong is all about being a champion. And this is Liz. Unfortunately, she also lost her husband, and she decided that she wanted to feel strong and she wasn't going to let the climacteric period get her down. And boy, it didn't. Turns out that her new love of powerlifting is well-founded, and she set a champion record of 135 kg squat and 165 deadlift. She is a world champion power lifter. So for some people, strength might be squatting, and power might be getting up out of the squat. Power for some people might be getting up out of the toilet. Out of the toilet, off the toilet. Katrine came to me with a tendinitis, hamstring tendinitis, and she was told that she probably shouldn't do any more running. And she said to me that if she couldn't run, she thinks she might do something that she will regret. It was her mental health. It was her way of dealing with things that life threw at you. And so we started off working in a place that she was comfortable. So like the shoulder, what we did is I said, could you run to your next door neighbor? And she was like, yeah. So I said, okay, start there. And then it's, can you run to the end of the street? Yes. And gradually she ran for 1 minute, 2 minutes. And now she's back up to 10 Ks, pain-free, no problem with the hamstring. We also worked on a bit of sequencing with the opposite extensor reflex, but I'm really, really super proud of her. This is Hina, and Hina has fibromyalgia. She has suffered a lot with aches and pains, and the way that I would say the most important thing is to make sure your client feels safe, that you're not going to make them do something that puts them into a place of fear. Now, although she looks like Lara Croft right there, she picked up her hand hoover to get something off the floor. So I was like, okay, right, well, we'll use that. And we started to use that in a game. And that was a great way of her starting to go, I'm strong, I can do this. And I'm like, yes, you are. And although she's had 2 knee operations, she's back moving, she's regaining her confidence, and she is not suffering with the same flare-ups of the fibromyalgia because she's built on her confidence of what she's capable of doing. So what I'm kind of starting to introduce, that it's not just about matching the biomechanics and knowing that some people want to feel like they can't walk down the stairs because you've grabbed hold of their glutes and you've got hold of their muscles in such a way that they feel it. So what I mean is you've made sure that they've gone into a eccentric loading of flexion, adduction, and internal rotation. Not in just one way, because there's no best exercise for anything, but in as many different ways as possible. And they wake up and go, yay, DOMS. But you need to know that if you've got a client that's suffering from fibromyalgia or hasn't slept for 3 nights, that's the last thing that they want. And so you've got to know that for them, it's going to be better if I load them with external rotation rather than internal rotation, and be aware of how they want to feel the next day. Most of my clients say that they have experienced a little bit of rage in the climacteric period, and nothing like a bit of boxing to make you feel better, but it isn't for everybody. So what I'd like to finish on is it's not just physical, it's psychological. And everything we've talked about today cannot be done if you haven't listened to your client. The interview process with your client isn't just about a PAR-Q. It's about hearing not just the words of your clients, but the breath change they make, the moment their foot spins to the door if you mention anything that reminds them of a hard, intense physical activity that they may not like. Or maybe you see the sparkle in the eye when you say burpees and they say, I used to love a burpee. You've got to notice. You've got to know what lights their fire. You've got to know, I remember when I used to horse ride, or I could ski for hours, or I was able to squat without any form of aches and pains. It's not just knowing that if you eccentrically load someone or you do lots of deceleration movements or move them in a way that they've not moved before, that they're going to wake up 2 days later feeling DOMS. And it's not enough just to know that if they're working creatine phosphate, they can lift heavy, but they won't feel it at the time. Or if they're working lactate system, it's going to feel really tough. Some people love that. Some people hate it. You need to know. You need to know everything about your client. You need to know if they prefer to feel aerobic and be able to talk the whole way through. And if you can do that, you can start to make sure that each session has that much thought, not just in an exercise, but where you place the exercise, the reps you put to the exercise, the way you coach that exercise, is it going to influence the way your client feels. And that's the most important thing, because they will remember and judge your sessions on the way you made them feel. Now, I did write over 100 different exercises and they're on the PDF. So if anybody wants me to go through any of those, then you can message me. It's a bit of a rocky road, but if you know what strength means to someone, if you know what power means to someone, if you know what they want to do, what they like, what they don't like, how they like to feel in the morning, 2 days after, during a session, you can start to build and design an emotion and connect that session with your client where they are. Thank you so much for your time, and I do hope that we've got time for a quick question afterwards. That would be awesome.
Yes, we do. Thanks, Joanne. It was really good stuff. I like what you said and how you said it was in April. It was called Reducing Risk of Falling Through Game. All of Joanne's contact info, if you want to reach out to her again, you'll have the handout that'll list some of those exercises in there. She mentioned reaching out to her, and just be sure to grab any of this information that seems relevant to you. Let me pull up the questions panel. I know there was one sitting in there. But while I do that, I just want to say to Joanne, I think that the thing that really comes through for me is I love that you kind of personalized all that stuff, like talking about strength and power. Those are generic abstract terms to us, or really not to us really, but more to the public. And when we personalize it to help someone garden better or to ski better, we breathe life into those things by personalizing them. Really, as you've seen, it makes much more of an impact on someone's life. So there's a question here from Kenrick where the question is, what books do you recommend trainers read on this subject?
I am a nightmare because I don't like books. Because you just have to be careful that by the time that a book has gone to print, some of the research may be outdated, and it is also through the lens of the author. However, if you do download the PDF, there's hundreds of research papers that I've put in there that could be useful. The one that I did read that I thought was actually on most topics quite good was Dr. Jen Guntner, the Menopause Manifesto. So that would be one that I would recommend as well. But on motor skill application specialist, the course that I run, we teach people how to read the research and ask the right questions.
Okay, very good. Glad you could at least give one actual title. That's helpful. I know, and it's also good that you didn't give 10 titles of books, because that can overwhelm people. Nice to just have one that you can recommend. It's not a question, but Dawn said, just love this session. Thank you so much, Joe. Looking forward to starting MSAS with you, Dawn. So she just wanted to give that little bit of love.
Thank you, Dawn.
See, so Karen is giving you a shout out too. I just want to say I have done Joe's Motor Skill Application Specialist, and this is an awesome course that teaches the process and has changed my entire business. So another little shout out for all you have is raving fans on here. There's no other.
That's my skier. So actually, I meant to say that Karen did come to me, I think we mentioned it before, with osteoporosis. And at that time, it was about 10 years ago, and I was new to doing research. And so it surprised me, because I was expecting that the pain that she was in was because of the osteoporosis, and it wasn't. And so what I had to do is dig deep and find out ways of moving. And back then, Karen just wanted to do a back bend. And I was like, oh, it doesn't say do back bends in any of the places I've read. But she's gone on to do back bends. So that's awesome.
Yeah, Kenrick has another comment here, a follow-up. She said, thank you. I love how you're focusing on what can be done versus can't. And for any other professional, I think, Kenrick, thank you for sharing that, because that's a massively important statement. It might not seem like the impact of that is readily apparent if you just hear it, but if you have enough experience with people, and I'm sure most of the people here have been working long enough to run into people who, the minute you say you need to start showing them some exercises for their lower body, the first thing they say is, I can't squat. If you say we need to start having you eat healthier foods, they tell you, I don't like broccoli. And I didn't say eat broccoli. I just said we need to eat healthier foods. So there's a certain personality type that will immediately tell you what they can't do the minute you start talking about things that you need to do. And fine, just say, okay, good, you can't do that, we'll do something else. And it's finding a way to focus on solutions rather than focus on the obstacles is a super important shift for all of us to make. So thank you in general for doing that in your presentation and with your clients, Joanne, but also Kenrick for highlighting that as an essential part of coaching clients in this space when they feel like their body's changing and they don't really understand why all the time, and they feel like they don't have control over it. Mm-hmm. Focusing on what they can do gives them a renewed sense of control and hope that they can restore some degree of control over their body and feel that sense of agency. Thanks, Kenrick, for highlighting that. I think that's going to take us to the end of our time today. So thank you so much, Joanne. I really appreciate it. Again, if you want to access her other one, you can go to medfittv.org. If you're a MedFit Network member, you can already get it. It was back in April. It's called Reducing Risk of Falling Through Gameplay. And be sure to check that one out or any of the other ones in there. And be sure to grab that information on the screen right now for getting in touch with Joanne and connecting with her. Just thank you all for giving us the gift of your time and attention today. And we hope to see you again next week on another webinar. So that's going to do my close. Joanne, I'm going to turn it over to you for any last minute thoughts. Just keep it brief and high impact and leave people with a bit of a rah-rah moment.
Yes, thank you, Kendrick. And I would just like to say that everything that we've talked about is really highlighting build self-efficacy. And if we can hold back on words that might create fear, even if it's just as simple as tight, dysfunctional, if we can keep those words out and help people see how good they are, how beautiful they are, and their body is enough, and that will encourage people to move more. I've never known anyone, if I put their favorite song on, can't move. Even my mum will do a wiggle. She says she can't get down low, but if you put Johnny Be Good on, she can twist like a demon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll hope to see you at our next webinar coming up soon.